What if there was a way to like optimize your body like your business? You're a driven entrepreneur, you're an impact minded parent. But sometimes we're not putting that impact, that driven nature on our body because we're falling into rhythms that are not healthy for us. I know for me, that was my story for years until I met one guy, and this guy changed the game for me. We actually got a chance to have him on the podcast. If you've been desiring an up level in your health, in the health game, in your health and fitness, this is the episode for you. But I promise you, it might not be like any other health message you've ever heard, because a lot of the health messages I heard were not super attractive. They weren't realistic for a parent, for an
Mhm.
entrepreneur. This guy works exclusively with entrepreneurs, and he really changed the game for me. So I believe he's going to change the game for you. Take a listen to this episode. It's going to be a good one. All right. So on the show today, we got the one and only Justin. Welcome to the show, man.
So good to see you, Chelsey, Stephen. I love the Rainmaker family, and so it's so great to spend a little bit of time with y'all.
I feel like it's a little weird seeing you with your shirt on. I feel like, me and Justin are in a men's like business group, and he's always like in the sauna. He's always sweaty. This guy is one of the like he mastered optimization of health.
Mhm.
And it's so fun having him in the group because we get to geek out on business, but he gets to level us up in our health as well. And we met through a mastermind. I think the first time we heard you talk, Justin, I was like, dang, we need this on the podcast, like, because
Mhm.
it really opened my eyes. Because I love business, I love entrepreneurship, I love optimization and like, optimizing the calendar and optimizing the finances. But I feel like health for me was kind of like the final frontier. Like it was kind of like the one thing that I let kind of go. And I was like, well, I'll be all right. I'm kind of young, whatever. I sit a lot. Who cares? But when we started really digging down, they really started to see there's room for improvement,
Mhm.
but it also wasn't as hard as I thought. I think a lot of times in the fitness realm, you get these kind of like almost like you do in the entrepreneurship realm, you get these like hustle bros, right? Who are like work out, do everything. And it kind of becomes this like almost like it's like a full-time job, right? And I was like, I'm looking for not the easy pill, but I'm also looking for how can we do this as simple as possible? And
Mhm.
so I actually started working with Justin, and he took me through a whole process. And what I loved about it was, I know like sometimes you do supplementation, things like that, and you have like 1,000 things to remember. And like as parents, as entrepreneurs, we already have so much to remember. I love that Justin, he can take all your supplements you need, custom formulate them to you, put them in one pill. Like, I'm like, this is amazing. I don't need to remember I have to take these two at night and these two in the morning. I'm like, I just take a bunch of these ones and that's it. And so whenever I tell people that, they're like, what? I need to learn more. So Justin, we
Mhm.
wanted to have you on the show. Wanted to talk about health, to talk about optimization. I mean, you've worked with,
Mhm.
thousands of clients now. And have a fun history as well of how you kind of brought this even to professional sports and how that led to what you're doing now. So I would love to start there. Start back in the day, because I think hearing a little bit of story, you're going down one pathway with health and you hit some walls and you're like, I need to do something different. Tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I think it's really unique, just the way that God created my journey and the way He facilitated it. Because if I actually take a step back and take a look at young Justin, is young Justin was super motivated, super excited about everything health, obsessed since I was 11, 12 years old. And as I was going through my journey, I went and was fortunate enough to come down to the United States on a hockey scholarship. Got a double undergraduate degree in exercise science and nutrition. Went from there to get my master's degree. From there, went and did postgraduate doctoral work in heart rate variability and sleep. And I say all of that simply to say that what I was learning didn't quite make sense to me. And the reason why I'm saying it didn't quite make sense was previous to coming down to school, I suffered greatly from body dysmorphia, anorexia, and uh, high levels of depression. And as I was going through this, I knew what to do. I knew what habits I need to implement. I knew what foods I needed to eat and how I needed to change the way I was operating. But I couldn't bring myself to do the things necessary to create the change. And as I got into the textbooks, as I got through all this education, every single thing that I learned was a single broad brushstroke approach. It was everybody needs to do this, everybody needs to do that. And as I sat there obtaining this information, listening to this information, writing all the tests, passing everything, doing all these things with flying colors, deep down, I just had this uneasy feeling. Well, I know that that's not the way because that wasn't my experience. That wasn't what gave me freedom of my health. That wasn't what optimized my level of nutrition and hydration and sleep and all the things that we look for. And so as I continued down that bucket and down that road, I was fortunate enough again to step into the National Hockey League as a health and performance director. And the first thing that I did when I stepped in there was I said, what would it look like if we actually used data to determine decisions and drive direction in which we went with each and every player? What would that look like? What would that look like to know what was going on inside each and every person's body? That ultimately, when we made a decision, we could either validate that decision and that habit that we implemented, or we could redirect us based upon whether we saw improvement or whether we didn't. And lo and behold, I was spent about 11 years in the NHL managing the health and performance of those 25 men on whatever team I was working for that season. There was 3 over the course of the 11 years. And 9 of those 11 years, what we ended up finding was that we were the least sick, least injured, and most consistent performing team year after year. And so we often got the award called least man games missed to injury. And so that we had best players available. Now, what does that mean? What does that have anything to do with being a mom, entrepreneurship, building a business, et cetera, et cetera? Well, just as there's a cost to being an athlete, and we had to build a system that was personalized, that was customized to ultimately drive decisions to mitigate the cost to create longevity and sustainability, we fail to remember that there's a cost to leadership, there's a cost to parenting, there's a cost to business. And yet we think our remedy to that is a vacation once a year, or going to bed earlier one night because we're just exhausted, or going and getting a babysitter and just taking a staycation. But what would it look like if we actually were able to say, Stephen, Chelsey, this is what's going on in your body. Here's some very specific things you're going to do because you're going to sleep, you're going to eat, you're going to train, you're going to try to recover in some way, shape, or form anyway. So why don't we optimize your time and maximize your efforts so that what you are investing, you're getting a return on? Because at the end of the day, you are the asset, not your business, not your family, not your investments, not anything. Those aren't the assets. You are the asset that multiply everything else around you. And once we can do that, once we can change that thought process, realizing you're the asset that impacts all of those things in a massive way, that's when everything changes.
I know, like, for us, I feel like for years we valued health, right? We loved being healthy and, like,
Mm,
doing things that, like, would feel healthy.
Mhm.
But it was, like, funny, like, how when we heard you present, and you did this presentation on how to run your body like a business. It was, like, almost like it all clicked because we make all these decisions in our business off of data, right? We look at
Mhm.
data before making decisions to reduce risk. It's like we've just been, like, grabbing random Instagram reels and be like, "Oh, turmeric's good for me. I'm
yep.
gonna go throw that into my cocktail of vitamins and supplements I'm
Mhm.
taking." And so the process you took us through was like, "Hey, let's actually dig into the data. Let's
Yeah.
actually do tests. Let's do some blood tests. Let's do some other panels and things like that. And then let's look at the metrics and go, oh, let's improve this, this, and this. And then create custom formulations to address those things." And so I want you to speak to that a little bit because I think we do live in this culture of like kind of like just grabbing random fads or random like, oh, this
Mhm.
supplement's good or drink this. And just kind of using like you said, like this one brush stroke for everything.
Yeah.
Speak to that a little bit and why that could be dangerous.
100%. I'll give the analogy back to like what a lot of your audience I think would probably gravitate to and understand is when you help people build businesses on Amazon. And so I very easily could go onto Amazon and say, "Ooh, I want that product. I love that. That looks like it's selling really great." And I'm going to go and just buy a whole bunch of these and throw them up there, and I should be able to do really well with it. Well, what you guys do is you assemble a team. And this team is able to then go and understand and talk through what's actually happening with this person on the back end, this new client that's coming in. You love this product. That's amazing. Well, actually, when we look at the data, that's actually a really hard product to break into. So I wouldn't suggest focusing there. I wouldn't suggest going there. I would actually suggest probably going to some of these top 10 that are going to be easier for you to break into because the data is showing us this. The trends are showing us this. We're seeing that the customer buying avatar is actually higher over here than over here. And so this is where you should spend your time focusing on how do we actually create this rather than this. And so you use the data to start helping your customer, your client navigate how to start a business. Once the business is going, we understand the health of the business based on buying rates, retention rates, lifetime value of a customer, et cetera, et cetera. And so we've got all this data that's helping us to drive forward. That data allows us to build a strategy. And once we have that strategy, we usually have a mentor or a coach or a team that continues to look back at the data that creates a new strategy based upon whether it's working or not. And so we have this model that creates long-term success. But we've never had this done for our health. It's always just been just a random choice or a random grab action here or there. And we wonder why we're not able to step into it. And often what people will say is, well, you just weren't committed to it. And I would actually argue the opposite of that. Because if we don't have a plan that's personalized, we don't even have the opportunity to commit to something. And so you can be committed to something random. And how the example I give is you want to get to LA and you live in Miami and you go due north. I don't care how committed you are to walking every single day. I don't care how committed you are to doing it as hard as you can. I don't care how committed you are to going as long as you can for as far as you can. You will never make it to LA because you're going the wrong direction. And so that's where we come in with the health side, is really being able to navigate around 4 key metrics. And those 4 metrics help us understand key things. Number 1, how your body's adapting to stress and strain. So mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress that you're under every single day, your body doesn't know the difference. And so that single metric is called heart rate variability. And if we can understand heart rate variability, we can understand the impact and the rhythm of the balance that's actually happening internally within your body that you are quite frankly just unaware of. So it gives you awareness to what's actually going on inside. So that's number 1. That is the key, most important metric that we can start to understand. Most wearables have this. Apple Watch has it, Oura Ring has it, Whoop Band has it, Ultra Human Ring has it. So we've got a lot of different opportunities to be able to look at this single piece of data.
What's up, Rainmaker? If you're like me, having a good night's sleep is an absolute must, especially as a parent and an entrepreneur. And I feel like I found the secret weapon. It's called 8 Sleep. This brand is a way to add heating and cooling to any bed. And I'm telling you, this cooling feature is an absolute life changer for me, especially during those warm summer months. This might be TMI, but I sweat very easily. And I didn't really realize how much this was affecting my quality of sleep. Once I slept on this bed that has a cooling feature, imagine like the cool side of the pillow, but like all over your body all the time. I do not know how I lived without this. So if you're ready to revolutionize your sleep, head over to rainmakerfamily.com/deals. We got a hookup for Rainmaker Family Show listeners. Again, that's rainmakerfamily.com/deals and check out 8 Sleep. All right, back to the show.
The second thing,
I remember you saying like about, I want to dig into HRV, heart rate variability, because most people I talk to who wear Apple Watches, wear Oura Rings, all these trackables, have no idea it's in there.
yeah,
And I'm always like, after your presentation, I'm like, hey, let me show you the most important one. Like, because you were like, this is like the daily KPI. It's like in your business, you have something you track every day. He's like, in your body, this is the thing. So from what I understand, it's like kind of the measure of how variable your heart rate is. And I kind of think of it like, if you're really relaxed, it's kind of like jazz and it's kind of like more variable, right? But if you're more stressed, it gets really like rhythmic and it gets like really less variable, right? And the key thing that you said in that presentation was like, don't compare yours to someone else. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because people are like, oh, I got a 30, I got a 70, and like they're like, I'm better than you, right? So it's so higher is better, right? So more variability, higher numbers better. Or like, and there's a lot of longevity kind of things tied to this. We see people like with living longer lives tied to this thing. Talk about HRV just for a little bit more, because I think I don't want people to miss this one, because you could be able to track this like right now on your
Mhm.
Apple Watch. You don't
Super
even know
easy.
it's there.
Yeah, so if you have an Apple Watch, which is obviously probably most common, if you want to get a little bit more specialized to like an act like best in class measurement of HRV, you're going to want to go and get an Oura Ring or a Whoop Band. But if you have an Apple Watch, I want you to go into Apple Health on your phone right now. We're going to do this live. Go into Apple Health on your phone, go to the bottom right corner, go to Browse. After you hit Browse, click on Heart, and then you're going to see a bar. It says heart rate variability. Click on that. You're going to be able to look at the day, the week, the month, the 6 month, or the year trend. What you should be seeing is an upward trend of HRV. That means that our body is adapting to stress and strain positively. It means the habits and behaviors that you have on a day-to-day basis, the amount of time you're exercising, the amount of time you're getting outside, the amount of time you're spending with family, the amount of time that you're sleeping and the quality of that sleep, compared with the stress from work, the stress from running the kids around, the stress from having the in-laws in place. Maybe it's a season where you're moving. Maybe it's a season where the business is struggling. Maybe there's financial pressures. Maybe you're sending your kids to college. Maybe you brought in a new child into the world. Whatever that might be, there's a balance and a rhythm that your body is like, I feel really good. I feel really good. And so what the actual measurement of heart rate variability is it's not the heart rate, but rather the time intervals between successive beats. And so our heart doesn't beat in steady intervals. Like if I have a resting heart rate of 60 beats per minute, it doesn't mean that my heart is beating at 1 beat per second. That's actually there's variances between those. So it might be 679 seconds, 892 milliseconds, 467 milliseconds, 842 milliseconds. And so somebody who has a high degree of variance, just as you said, Stephen, is in a great rhythm. Now, when somebody is not in a great rhythm and there's over stressing happening, that's when we start to see like an 800 millisecond, 825 millisecond, 817 millisecond, 827 millisecond, and it starts to get much closer to that 1 beat per second state. And so that is it's a critical metric. It is one of the most important that we can see because again, if for your age, and I don't know everybody's age who's listening to this, but on average, if you are 40 years old, you are going to want to see an average HRV of 45 to 85. And if you're below or even in the lower numbers of like 50, 45, 40, your body's communicating, hey, I'm not adapting as well to stress and strain as I should be. And thus, we should start taking a deeper look into why that is. And that's when we can get into those 3 other metrics that are so critical and important to understand so that we can start to mitigate some of the stressors on the body.
Man,
Mm.
that's so good. I mean, I remember when I started digging into this, I like feel like I'm a pretty chill guy. But when I started looking at my HRV, I was like, "Oh, snap. I'm stressed." Like,
And
cause
just
I
not
think you
showing
live
it,
at it
yeah.
for so long that it's just like, this is my normal. Like, we run a big business and like it's intense and you just kind of live there. And even working with you, it was just like, hey, just try this like really simple breath work thing. Like while you're going to the bathroom, like you're going to go to the bathroom a few times a day, right? Like just do it then. And then just even that little thing, I saw like increase in HRV. And then the other thing that I think is so powerful with it is you can almost predict stuff, right? Like if we saw a 3-day drop in HRV, it'd be like, hey, your body might be a little more susceptible to getting sick. Up
Mhm.
your, up the vitamin C's and those types of things right now. And you'd actually text me, hey, what's going on? I see a 3-day drop. Like start taking your immunity protocol, right? And I mean, that I feel like was such a game changer too. Like during travel, during other times, like that was such a eye-opening metric. It's like, honestly, I don't care a lot about I don't love the like, hey, here's how your sleep was last night on the app. I'm just like, hey, if I felt good, don't tell me it was bad.
Mm.
But the HRV I do look at. That's one I look at the most.
Mhm.
And even what you just said there is so critical because it comes back to what I said right at the very beginning, where for athletes, our biggest metric at the end of the year was what was the man games lost to injury or sickness. And we were always in the lowest of the league once we started to implement this. Well, same thing here. How difficult is it for you to be out of your business or out of your family for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days because you've got the flu or you've got a cold and it continually comes back year after year after year at the same time, sometimes multiple times per year. Or you start traveling and as soon as I travel for 5 or 6 days, I'm going to come back and I'm going to get sick and now I'm going to be run down and I'm not going to be as good and I'm not going to be able to impact as well. I'm not going to be able to parent as well and I'm not going to be able to run my business as well. And I've got so many things on my to-do list. They just start packing up and up and up. And then that increases the stress level and then overwhelm hits. And then all of these other things start to come. Well, what if we were able to prevent it at the beginning simply because we were able to make some heavier, more important decisions off of data?
Justin, what's coming to mind for me are, I have two questions. One, we talked a little bit about like traveling, but I want to start with sleep. I think for moms and parents just in general, like sleep is so important for anybody, but it's just like there's so many studies, there's so many things in relationship to sleep. And I know like working with you and you guys have a very personalized approach to everything. So again, I'm not all about like, try this one thing for
Yeah.
everyone. I think there's different things, but when it comes to like the hundreds of different women and moms that you've worked with that want to improve their sleep, what are some of those big things that like listeners could do and start implementing right away that would increase like the depth and the restfulness of their sleep?
It's a great question. And that kind of comes back into those three other metrics, right? So you've got HRV, that's the golden star, golden standard, what we want to see. And then people go, well, how can I increase that? Well, first metric is sleep quality. And so when people are measuring sleep or even thinking about sleep, oftentimes what's the first thing they say? How long they slept. I get 8 hours of sleep. I get 6 hours of sleep. I get 9 hours of sleep. Well, last night I slept for 10 hours and I'm exhausted. I slept for 5 hours. I'm exhausted. I don't know what to do anymore. Well, when we can look at sleep quality, there's 4 stages of sleep. There's a light sleep stage, a slow wave sleep, a REM sleep, and then a wake cycle. It takes about 90 minutes to get through all 4 stages of sleep. And what determines sleep quality versus sleep quantity is how much time is spent in those middle two phases, slow wave and REM sleep. And so our goal is to have somewhere between 38 and 50% of total sleep time in those middle two stages. And so people say, well, Justin, how do I do that? Well, multitude of things that we can start to look at. But if you were to say, hey, I'm going to start implementing something today, there's a simple 3-2-1 rule. It's 3 hours before bed, no more heavy meals because we got 400 times more melatonin produced in our gut than is produced by our brain. So we have to make sure we're not having to digest food late at night. 2 hours before bed, we're shutting off any type of heavy decision making, any type of work, any type of scheduling or deep conversation that's going to cause any type of conflict or high level depth analytical thought thinking. And then 1 hour before bed, we want to eliminate all blue light because for every 60 minutes of blue light exposure after sunset, it delays melatonin release by 30 minutes. And so we can start to see how that depth of sleep can really start to be impacted by how we're moving forward. The other thing that we need to focus on, and I'll give a tip that a lot of maybe new moms or people with kids who struggle to sleep will just think is a game changer and a lifesaver, is consistent sleep and wake times. So all the data is showing that if we go to bed within about 30 minutes and wake up within about 30 minutes, what that does is it starts to optimize circadian rhythm and hormone release. And so we start to think about a lot of these hormone issues or pre and perimenopause or a lot of these things that are going on. We can actually start to create changes as this happens. Now, if you have a newborn child or you have a child that doesn't sleep very well and you're like, hey, Justin, I go to bed at a normal time, but I get woken up 4 or 5 times throughout the night by screaming kids or kids coming into the bed or whatever it might be. And I try to wake up at the same time, like, but I'm exhausted. How do I get the best nap? Well, here's a simple equation to get your best nap ever without disrupting or interrupting any of your circadian rhythm. Basically, what you do is you take your typical bedtime and your typical wake time. So let's say it's 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. The middle point or the halfway point would be 2 a.m. 4 hours. It's a total of 8 hours. So you got 4 hours. So 2 a.m. And our circadian rhythm works on a 12-hour clock. So your optimal nap time, the optimal nap window would be somewhere between 2 and 2:30 p.m. So if you could get a 20 minute-ish nap in at 2 to 2:30, that would be optimal to reset your circadian rhythm to help you get through the rest of your day, minimize cortisol release, et cetera, while not interrupting that next sleep the next night. And so that becomes the second data point that we want to be able to look at, which is sleep quality. And then based off of habits that we start to implement, we can actually start to see improvements or decreases in sleep quality, which will then help guide us on which ones are really important. So you're no longer just randomly trying to put a night routine together or randomly trying to put a wake routine together, but it's very purposeful and personalized based off the season of life that you're in and what is working for you or not. And when sleep quality goes up, so does HRV. And so that's really what we start to look at from that second metric.
Mm.
Wow.
Justin, I'm wondering in the winter months, like in California at least, like, I think of January, it'll be dark by like 4:30, 4:45-ish. And I know you're saying like no blue light an hour before you go to bed, but what are some things in those winter months that could be helpful? Because it's like I think about those months and like we have the lights on and the boys are still like running around trying to play at like 5 o'clock at night. You
Yeah.
know, what about those months? How can you still lean into quality sleep? Obviously, eating and having those good nighttime routines, but the light piece, like what would you recommend for that?
Such a great question. This comes back to the level of intention and depth of detail that we're going to put in. And so, a simple strategy, especially in cities and areas of the country that get darker during the winter, is what I often suggest is getting a lot of lamps. And why do you get a lot of lamps? Because you're able to they usually have dimmer switches and they can usually be dimmer rather than just having these lights fully blown, the LEDs, the overarching that are top down. And so again, the way that the science works, any type of top down bright lights again continues to signify that it's daytime, that there should be cortisol, which is energy producing. But if we start to turn on lamps or we start to turn on more candles or some type of dimly lit lights, in our home, what we did was we actually put on dimmer switches around that have lights that are all actually uplighting. And so at night we have uplighting that's on a dimmer switch, and it again just puts a very soft amber glow in the house that just again starts to downregulate us, playing soft, quieter music, these types of things in the winter months. So it starts to downregulate us sooner because again, that's what circadian rhythm is trying to get us to do.
Awesome. And then on the topic of travel, like what are some things that could be implemented for anybody traveling or families getting ready to travel once they maybe land in their destination and then even coming home to ensure like quality sleep and just like overall the not getting sick and those kinds of things.
Yeah. So number one, anytime you're traveling, if you are changing time zones and you're staying there for 36 hours or less, stay on your native time zone. So stay on like your time zone of home origin. But if you're going for 36 hours or more, immediately try to shift into that new time zone. Because what that'll do is it'll allow you to your body stops getting so confused, right? So that's number one. Number two is anytime you're changing time zones again, make sure that you're never eating when you would be typically sleeping in your native time zone. So, for example, I'm in Miami coming out to California to see y'all. All of a sudden, it's 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and are gonna start having dinner out there. Well, that's 9 o'clock my time. I'm typically going to bed. So I would actually forego and say, hey, you know what? For first night, I'm not going to eat dinner with you guys. I'm just going to chill. But then the next day or the next day after, if I'm there for longer than 36 hours, I'm going to eat dinner the normal time with you guys because my body's now adapted to it. But if I'm only there for 36 hours, I'm going to change. I'm going to make a different decision because, again, I want to make sure that I'm not up tossing and turning and rolling and twisting throughout the night because I'm stuffed and I can't, and I feels like I ate a meal at 10 o'clock at night, right? So these are the things that we can just start to do. And they're very purposeful decisions that people are like, well, how am I not going to eat dinner with somebody when I'm out there with them? Again, it comes back to a purposeful choice. Does that mean that you don't get a small side salad and just say, hey, yeah, this is where I'm going to leave it for tonight? Or being able to do something slightly different? But you're able to start making some choices that that are garnered for you. In terms of getting onto a plane, I always suggest an immune protocol. So this is where you're going to make sure that you're increasing vitamin C, increasing zinc, and making sure that you're doing some type of sauna or toxicity release as soon as you land from wherever you were. If that's a workout, if that's a sauna, if that's a steam room, whatever that might be, just to make sure, again, you get all of those toxins that have just been built up in the system out.
Gotcha.
That's awesome.
When it comes to food for traveling, I love that rule of like, less than 36 hours. If it's 4 o'clock and you're about to eat dinner and it's really this later time, just don't do it. Does that include like drinking any drinks or like
Yeah, I feel like the older I've
water or
gotten,
like
the more things affect me, like, later in the
Yes,
day. Like,
yeah.
caffeine used to never affect me at, like, 3 PM. Now it's like, "No, that's a
Yeah.
bad idea."
Yeah.
It's a bad
Alcohol,
idea.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
I feel like we used
Alcohol,
to
I
be in
just
masterminds
can't.
and we'd,
Yeah.
like, have a wine like, some wine at
Yeah.
8 PM and it'd be
No.
fine.
Never.
Now it's like, "No, it's a bad idea." What is with that? Is that just, like, a getting older thing? Like, can you explain this to me?
No, to be honest with you, a lot of it just comes back to um, the closer your body starts to get to running more optimally,
Mm,
Uh,
the more you start to notice the dysfunction. And
interesting.
gotcha.
so
I just
when
lived at a level of dysfunction for so long.
well, that's the thing is like to be honest with you, as when you're younger, it's not actually that you have a better ability to get rid of a lot of these things. It's that there's so much dysfunction, so many things that you're having to actually go through that this just feels normal. Like I still remember, like I'm sure you can remember it too, Stephen and Chelsea. Like there's moments when you were young where you would go out and you would drink and do what you were doing and then eat garbage food and then wake up and just have a massive hangover and then just battle through that because that's just what you did. And then go about it and do it all the next day. And then maybe you drank less and ate less poorly. And you're like, man, that wasn't so bad. And nowadays, because you're starting to behave and act more in accordance to what your body's desiring, especially after a lot of the knowledge and wisdom that you guys now have and how you've been able to change your lifestyles, all of a sudden, when some things are off, you're like, oh my gosh, how did I ever operate and function this way? And so the closer we get to, and the more optimal we get, the greater we're starting to realize some of the behaviors and how dysfunctional they actually became.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I feel like, I mean, we talked about this on the podcast before. Like, I definitely love candy. Okay. And, but I've noticed even in this last year that it affects me. Like I used to just be
Mm.
able to eat candy. I
Wow.
enjoy it.
Okay.
Now I'm like, shoot, I can't eat candy at a certain time because it'll actually, like, I'll feel tired, like I'll
Yeah.
Mm.
feel like, oh, it kind of like throws off my day. So it's like, I value optimization and I only have certain days that I'm like, this is my one day to do this thing for the business. And I have other people counting on me. I'm not having candy. I
Yeah.
did get from this week. We had a big launch. I celebrated, I got a little candy, but timing, it's really like, it's important. And I think that's it. It's like, I'm getting better in these areas. So you
Mm.
notice these things more,
Yeah.
and you notice the thing that you just thought was normal.
Mm.
So I would
Yeah.
love to hit those, like the last two pillars. You said we got HRV, we had sleep quality. There's two other ones, I think, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the other one is VO2 max. And what VO2 max looks at is your body's ability to utilize oxygen. And so we know that oxygen is critical for the body to function, for mental clarity, just to be able to be alive. Like the definition of death is the absence of oxygen. And so we know the importance of that. And so how do we increase VO2 max, which is an increase in fitness? Well, so many people are on their Peloton or they're going to group fitness or they're going to their personal trainer, but they never actually lose any weight. They never actually feel any fitter. Their bodies don't actually change. And if we actually looked at VO2 max, a lot of people's VO2 max and their ability to use oxygen and the efficiency in which that is actually decreases as they start to do a lot of these efforts. And so, how we actually get more personalized is understanding what your body needs, what heart rate zone you need to train at, why you need to train there, for how long you need to train there. And we can actually start to see VO2 max go up, which, as a byproduct, you get the physical benefits that you're looking for too. You see the weight loss, you see the clothes fitting better, you see your muscles more defined, you see all these things happen and now all of a sudden, imagine your oxygen efficiency increases Thus, just sitting here having this conversation, our body's stress level is lower. Sleeping, it's more efficient traveling oxygen. Thus, sleeping's less stressful. Doing day-to-day activities, walking with the kids, sitting at the computer, doing the things that we just take for granted daily become less stressful. Thus, if VO2 max goes up, so does HRV. And so again, we start to see these correlations in really purposeful timing and motion.
That's awesome. What's one way to
Go
increase
ahead.
VO2 max? Like if you're trying to increase
Yeah.
that, because I think I remember HRV and VO2 max were like weren't those like some of the two biggest indicators of longevity of
Yeah.
living a long life?
Yeah. So, two highest data markers of comorbidity in highest relation were VO2 max and HRV. So, if you have a high HRV and a high VO2 max, the likelihood of you living um, for far extended beyond the average lifespan for men, it's 72.8. For females, it's 78.3, is extremely significant. And so, the other thing that I think comes along with that, and I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole, but it's lifespan versus health span. And so you can have a long lifespan at 87 years old, but at what point did your health span stop? Like it might have been at 70 years old, and you've got a 15-year gap of dementia and uh, illness and sickness and bedridden. And that's not a life that anybody's really signing up for, that you really want to live for. It's how do we like I always say to people, I'm going to live until whenever God calls me home. And that time minus a minute, I'm going to be doing every single thing that I want because I'm able and well. And that's my goal, is to have the longest health span possible. And so going back, how do you improve it? Well, number one, when we get VO2 max, we can start to get very specific heart rate zones and being able to identify, okay, what's our zone two? Let's find zone two in that heart rate parameter for you as an individual. Let's spend 120 minutes there a week. Let's maximize that timeline. Let's choose it. Is it pushing the kids in a stroller? Is it jogging with the kids in a stroller? Is it swimming in the backyard? What is it going to be that gets us into that zone two? And what can we start to double and triple up on so that we can maximize it in our lifestyle? And then zone five, which is obviously a higher level of intensity, but zone five for about 30 minutes a week. And if we can do those two things while adding in some strength training and a very purposeful zoning pattern, it's inevitable that we're going to see a VO2 max increase. But again, it comes back to knowing the data. And then lastly, number four, the last one is where we come in, and it's nutrition. And I know this is, I think, everybody's deep interest point is like, what's my nutrition? What should I do? And I often say if your nutrition has a name to it, or your diet has a name to it, it's probably the wrong one for you. And it's like we have to come back to it. It's like, do I do paleo? Do I do keto? Do I only eat before noon? Do I not eat after noon? Do I only eat vegetables? Only eat meat? Only eat vegetables before noon? Only eat fruit after noon? It's like, oh my God, just stop. It's like none of these have been built for you. None of these have been designed for you. They're all just marketing things that people have pulled you into. What if we actually took a step back and did cellular testing, which is a blood test, to understand what you're deficient in from a vitamin, mineral, and amino acid standpoint? Now, vitamin, mineral, and amino acids are literally the fundamental building blocks to every single process in the body. I'm going to say that again. Every single process in the body. The definition of every single one is every single one. All, everything. And so when all of a sudden I start hearing about inability to stay asleep, inability to fall asleep, hormonal issues, progesterone, testosterone issues, pre and perimenopause issues, even issues with carrying out full pregnancies. And the first thing that comes to my mind is micronutrient deficiency, because our body doesn't have the building blocks in order to do what it was designed to do well. And that's what we honestly don't look at. Now, someone might ask, what's the difference between a cellular test and, say, the blood test I typically get at my doctor's, or the blood test I do at my functional clinic, or some of these other companies like Inside Tracker and 10X that are doing a lot of these blood testings? There's two different types. There's serum testing, blood serum, and then there's cellular testing. Blood serum looks at what is just freely floating through the blood. So you can have vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin K, a bunch of minerals freely flowing in the blood because you ate certain foods, because you took certain supplements, but you don't have the cofactor, the enzymes, or the ability to break them down and bring them into the cell for the body to use. And because of that, your body then believes that you're starving for that thing, and thus it doesn't actually utilize it, doesn't actually create every other process down the road from that. And so when we can do the cellular panel, we can all of a sudden understand uniquely, Stephen, what you're deficient in, uniquely, Chelsey, what you're deficient in. And we can start to, number one, build a personalized nutrition plan for you that's focused on high delivering foods and high potent foods in those vitamins and minerals. We can look at areas that are highly anti-inflammatory and high in antioxidants for you based on the cellular report. And then now you can go know exactly what it is that you need to eat. Man, I need to eat all my citrus fruits in the morning because that's when my body absorbs them best. And I'm actually highly deficient in vitamin C and let's say folate. So those are things that I'm going to want to focus on. Green leafy vegetables, make sure you eat them with protein. So it's an easier way to bring them into the cell to be able to be used. These are things that we don't know until we actually do some of this testing. And then secondarily, going back to what you were talking about, Stephen, is instead of you having 19 different supplements that you got to take throughout the day that are randomly said to, oh, this is anti-inflammatory, this is high antioxidant, this is a great immune supplement, this is just something that is great for energy. What if we were able to then build you a single compounded supplement that was unique to you based upon that cellular deficiency so that we could start to mitigate those deficiencies, which then would start easing the stress on the body, which would decrease cellular deficiencies and thus increase HRV. And so those are the ways that we work together with data to make sure that we can help you in the most simplest, seamless way possible so that what we're building is sustainability and making sure that we can empower you to allow your body to do what it was naturally built to do.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to be like testimonial for you, Justin, because I literally did this, and it's you make the process so easy. You sign up for this cellular testing, um, panel. What's it called? Cellular testing
Cellular
panel.
testing panel, yep.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't even have to go anywhere. They come to you. So they show up at your house, super nice. They do the blood draw. It's not scary. It's not anything like that. They send it in, and then you get on a Zoom call with an expert and they're like, hey, let me show you your results. And they actually read it through and I'm like taking notes and, I don't understand half the things, but they're explaining. I'm like, okay, this is like this. This is like that. And they're making analogies that help me really understand it.
Yeah.
And then not only like do they, create this custom supplement, which is amazing. That for me was the biggest, like when I heard that I was sold, like that's all I needed. Cause I'm a little ADHD and it's hard for me to remember, like just taking it once a day, it's not right in front of me. It's like, doesn't even exist. I could go days just forgetting completely about it. If it was in the drawer, I have to like leave it out, but like remembering to do it at lunch and dinner and all these things is no way. And so just having one pill is amazing, but then also you just do this like every 6 months or so, right? Or some people do every quarter, some people do every 6 months. And then it's like, whoa, like I think from my first time I did it to like maybe my third time, right? And I think by the second, that was a pretty drastic, but by the third time, it was high percentage. I forget the number, but it was like 90% of the things that we wanted to improve had improved. It was wild. And some of the stuff
so you actually started with 14 deficiencies and
okay, you got it up. Nice.
yeah, we started with 14 deficiencies so we did it a quarter later and you were down to 7. So we cut them in half. And then on our third one, we were down to 2, but the 2 deficiencies that we had were different than our previous study.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's wild. And it's so cool because like, again, it's like you take the supplements, but then there's also just like simple stuff. Like it was like, hey, just add in, you're eating that protein yogurt. Just add in ground flaxseed powder in there.
Yeah.
Right? And that'll fix this one thing. And I was like,
yep.
Wow, that was so easy. And I love that because I think we do grab a lot of these fad diets and like, oh, carnivore and all this. And yeah, it might work for, some people, but like if you really know what your body needs, you could be doing the complete opposite of what and me and Chelsey have kind of found our diets we need are different because I think the first thing we ever did together was keto. We got really into keto and we saw some cool results. But then we kind of realized, okay, Chelsea, when she actually started digging into her numbers and panel and stuff like that, I was like, oh, actually, I should not be doing dairy or gluten really at all. Yeah. And then like it was just like it's different. So we've kind of learned how to order and how to eat based on that.
Yeah. Justin, I would love to know, this is kind of going back a little bit, but I heard you say zone two. And I've heard that like people talking about like zone two cardio. Where did that come from? And like, what does zone two mean? I'm just like genuinely curious.
Yeah. So what zone two is it's referring to a training zone in the terms of how high your heart rate is. So your heart rate has a max heart rate. Like each and every one of us has a max heart rate that we can reach. And as we age, that max heart rate that we can reach slowly starts to decrease. And males are usually slightly higher than females. But depending on your fitness range and how efficient you are with oxygen, hence VO2 max, also has an impact on how high your max heart rate can be reached. So what zone 2 is referring to is it's referring to 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. So let's say, for example, I'm just going to do some quick
So it's
math.
not like I'm dying, but it's like I'm definitely working.
No, it's actually it's like it's pretty manageable. Like it's
Okay.
conversational. So let's say, for example, my max heart rate, my max heart rate is 180. So for me, zone 2 for me starts at 108 beats per minute. And it goes up to 180 times 0.7, 126. So 108 to 126 is zone 2 for me. Before I got onto this phone call, I was outside in our backyard gym, and I was on the bike, and I kept myself at about 121. And I had a heart rate monitor, and I was on there for about 30 minutes. I took 2 phone calls while I was on the bike, and I listened to a little bit of music, and I did an Instagram story. So that kind of gives you the understanding of like, it's a multitasking place. You can do like mindless work while you do it. But what that does is it builds capacity for you to, it's called aerobic capacity, work capacity, builds capacity for you to be able to do more work and work at a higher level of output with less effort, because you just have a better ability to remove toxins from your body, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a key thing that we need to be able to have in order to maximize longevity.
That's awesome.
Got it.
Wow. I know we're wrapping up the hour here. Man, this has been so cool. I think people are going to be geeking out on this. And I also feel like people are going to be wanting to dive into this, doing this other panel. I'd highly recommend it. Like if you've never done something personalized for you, for your health, like make this the first thing you try. I know it, like if you've never done it before, for me, I was like, it made sense when I heard it, but I never heard about it until like literally, I mean, like I was probably 33, 32. Like I went 32 years of life not knowing that you could even have this level of like personalization to supplementation health and this type of thing. So if you've never done this before, Justin agreed to hook our crew up with the Rainmaker family. And this it's usually like an $800 panel to get started. They send the person out to their house, they do the testing, it comes with the they're going to review it with you, they're going to give you their custom plan. But we're knocking that down quite a bit. So if you go to the link in the show notes, we'll put in the show notes, use the code Rainmaker. You're going to get some hefty savings on that. You can get started. And we wouldn't bring this to you guys if it didn't create breakthrough in our life. And so I'm going to encourage you guys, if this is stirring something in you, go jump on that link and get something scheduled. And you could hear just, I mean, my results of just seeing those things improved. And just having the guidance, it just brings that confidence to know like, okay, I'm not just trying to like randomly figure things out. I'm actually knowing what's happening and I have the data to back it. And then we check on it and I can see like, did it work or did it not? Right. And you guys heard like it definitely works. So Justin, thank you for doing that for our audience. Anything you want to say about that? Like the panel, anything that you see common questions people have as they're kind of considering doing that?
Yeah. So I think the big thing that we often get right away is what's the difference between this and what I've already gotten done? And I mentioned it before, difference between serum and cellular testing. The second thing we usually get asked is this something that insurance covers? And the answer is no, insurance doesn't cover this. However, what we've been really focused on is making sure that we can get this to as many people as possible. And so we're the only company in the world actually that accepts HSA and FSA dollars. If that's something that you have access to, that we can apply to this to make sure that we can help get you the information that you need. And then, as you mentioned already, Stephen, the process is just we try to make it so easy. You're busy, you've got families that you're managing, you've got businesses you're managing. And so we've been built for that business owner who's constantly going, constantly on the move. And so you'll get onboarded, we'll get all your medical history. You're actually talking to a medical professional, not some random nurse salesperson, but really getting on with somebody who knows what's going on. They're going to get you set up. The phlebotomist will come to your home, to your office, to your daycare, wherever you need to go. So it's nice and convenient for you. And then be able to get on with our team to really give you that personalized breakdown and help you understand what's there. Not just have a piece of paper that goes, oh, here's a bunch of random colors, but actually understand what it means so that you can use it and step into these new actions that are going to create some new type of outcome for you as well. So we were happy to be able to just extend that to your audience, and just are really excited to always start impacting people who are continuing to strive to impact others.
Sweet, man.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
It's great, guys. I appreciate you.
All right, you guys. If this was a helpful episode for you, go take action. Grab the link in the show notes. Use the code Rainmaker. Grab yourself one of these panels and get started on your health journey with Own It. If you have a friend, man, and you're like, oh, I'm thinking of that friend as I'm listening to this show, share this with them. This could be the game changer for what's going on in their health to help them really get to the bottom of those things that have been a mystery for years. So, Justin, thank you so much for being on. We'll see you on the next one.